This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to the American Monetary Association's podcast, where we explore how monetary policy impacts the real lives of real people and the action steps necessary to preserve wealth and enhance one's lifestyle.
It's my pleasure to welcome Jeff Deist. He is with the Mises Institute, and we've had many Mises people on over the years. We've discussed a lot of their fantastic content, and it's a great honor to have him. Jeff, welcome. How are you?
Jason, I am fantastic. How are you?
Good. It's good to have you. So there is no shortage of news nowadays in terms of the economy, in terms of government intervention, interference with the economy. We are living in interesting times for sure. Maybe we'll start off, Jeff, by I'll just ask you, what are you talking and thinking about and writing about at Mises nowadays?
Well, there's a lot of parallels in my mind anyway, between the 2007-2008 crash we all experienced and what's happening right now. And, while we certainly don't feel like we're in a crash and we don't necessarily feel like we're in a bubble with respect to equities or housing or anything else, I think a lot of what's happening is in slow motion. And I think just this enormous amount of money, both on the fiscal side with Congress and the monetary side with the central bank, have really sort of given us a false sense of security. It's given us some breathing room. I think a lot of the underlying fundamentals for the economy are really rocky. And part of that is, regardless of what you thought of the economy before COVID, when you shut down the world for 12 months or 16 months or 18 months, that has a lot of repercussions. We live in a global just-in-time delivery system. Yeah. And we're finding that out. When you cut production, when you send people home, when you pay them not to work, that's not just a switch which you can turn back on. And if you go to your local restaurants, you'll find out just how true that is. But if we look at semiconductors, for example, somehow we got ourselves in this situation where almost all the semiconductors we use in America are sourced from the tiny country of Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And now, semiconductors are in your refrigerators, they're in pickup trucks, they're in your Apple iPhone, they're in your Xbox, they're in everything. And so when you get a big delay on those, for example, that filters throughout the economy. We saw this earlier with lumber, which has recovered somewhat since. And of course, that affects housing very directly. We're seeing it on the employment side. We're seeing this at all kinds of hourly and lower paid jobs where people are struggling to find a clearing rate. I guess you could call it the market rate, but I think the government exploits this, a clearing rate for lower wage jobs. So there's a lot of dislocations in the economy right now. And we're really hearing this from construction folks as well. I don't think things are as rosy as portrayed. And I think I think the Fed and Congress have probably bought some time by giving people enhanced unemployment benefits, by passing out these PPP loans. And I think the markets have probably liked that. But I don't think that all this can go on indefinitely without seeing some pain, whether that's on the inflation side or whether that's on the, on the side of just goods and services we all want to purchase.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's so much to slice and dice in your comments there. Of course, the chip shortage it's killing the automakers. It is truly amazing to me that we're still talking about shortages. It seems like that should have cleared the system 6 to 8 months ago, but yet here we are, and almost every vendor we source products from in my businesses is complaining about a shortage. And, maybe to some extent they're using that as an excuse to raise prices, or maybe it's real. It's probably a blend of both. And then, the restaurant workers, nobody wants to work. Why would they when you can make more money staying at home? So the government is really creating inflation in a way that I didn't really consider, in that they're forcing private businesses to compete with enhanced government perks due to COVID. And so now they're having to pay fast food workers $20 an hour, $500 signing bonuses. Whoever heard of a fast food job paying a signing bonus? What is this, a professional sports team or something? It's crazy.
Well, where I live, a small college town, there's not only signing bonuses, but there's walk-in interviews and free food and all this. But what's so difficult to predict or understand about this is that there's two sort of twin opposing forces at work, and one of which, the shutdown itself, the enhanced unemployment benefits. All of these things are hugely deflationary. When people stop traveling, when they stop going to work, when they stop eating out, when they stop driving their car as much, that's just less economic activity. That's hugely deflationary. And at the same time, whenever there's gross uncertainty in the economy, people naturally save more money. You'll see cash balances increase. It's the most natural and predictable thing in any severe recession. So that's extremely deflationary, both on the side of wages and also on the side of prices. So Congress and the Fed believe in inflation. Not only they believe in it, it's their policy.
It's their Bible. You kidding me?
Right.
It's their business plan. Yeah.
So everything they do is to incur and encourage inflation. So we used to say 2% every year was healthy. Well, now the Fed is saying, hey, we just want an average of 2% over many, many years. It's okay because inflation's been so low to have 4% for a while. And of course, from my perspective, this is absolute madness.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that genie doesn't go back in the bottle very easily. And they have kicked the can down the road pretty successfully, I'd say. I mean, success in their definition of success, not mine or yours. But, the question is, where is this going? And when you mention deflationary pressures, yes, but we saw that it was such a short-lived thing. The supply-demand shock that occurred after the lockdowns lifted is just so enhanced. I don't know what the word is, probably a better word than that. But, airfare is not cheap, yet air travel has plummeted, right? So they've pulled back and now there are shortages. So it's kind of it's a sort of a no man's land to some extent.
Well, I think that the economy could work this out if we let it. Yeah, I think that's the most important lesson. The airlines can adjust. They've cut flights. That accounts for why airplanes are so crowded, because they've cut certain routes. So there's one flight a day instead of 5 or something like that. But at the end of the day, what the economy needs is stuff. When we talk about economics, we're talking about stuff. How do we get stuff, the goods and services we want? And hopefully, how do we get that stuff cheaper over the years through deflation and technology and through productivity? Some companies make money, they pour that money into more productive ways to bring us goods and services. So that's what we ought to be thinking about, is stuff. But instead, we're thinking about money. It doesn't matter how much money or credit you pump into economy. That doesn't create new Ford F150s by magic. That just creates more money. So I think we're looking at this the wrong way fundamentally.
Yeah. So expand on that if you would. I mean, yes, there are more currency units in the system. They do chase the limited supply of goods and services. We're certainly seeing that in real estate. No, I mean, it's just been crazy for my real estate business. And, we are seeing that in some consumer products with the shortages. But where does that all lead? I mean, are we looking at a very, very inflationary future? And if so, how long does it last? Of course, it will be uneven. If you have comments on the unevenness of this potential inflationary future, please comment on that.
Well, the unevenness is the rub. That's the inequality that we talk about. And I would say the Fed, not capitalism, is the biggest driver of that, because people who are more connected get the new money sooner in the process. And the poorest people, the people living on fixed incomes, people who are retired and can't work anymore, tend to get it last. So that's called the Cantillon effect, after a famous French economist.
Richard Cantillon,
So that's the rub. But, I think we've been living in an inflationary environment. We just haven't seen it as such, because for the most part, since the crash of 2008, and now since, I guess we could say, the crash of March 2020, that's gone into assets. And so we've seen enormous price inflation in equity markets. We've seen it in housing. We've seen it in education. We've seen it in some services like medical. But we haven't seen it too much in just day-to-day across the board prices at the grocery store, let's say. I don't think, this is a prediction, I could be wrong, but I don't think that the Fed nor the Treasury are going to be able to contain inflation in the 2020s at the consumer price level the way they have been since the 2008 crash. I think this time around, some of that money is going to find its way into the prices we all see. And we all understand shrinkflation. We all look at meat prices at the grocery. Gas and groceries are the two most visible signs for average folks. And if those two are going up, I think Biden and the Democrats are going to have a hard time in 22.
Well, I hope they have a hard time in 2022, that's for sure. But, the alternative is only a little better. It's not that much better, but it is what it is. So the chances for a double dip or the turn in the business cycle, it's just been amazing to most economists, including myself, that they have just been able to continue this house of cards economy. And when I say they, of course, I'm talking about the U.S. government and central bank, but also every other country to a lesser degree. Of course, the U.S. has a huge advantage with reserve currency, biggest military, et cetera, et cetera. But, how long can they keep this going? At what point do the chickens come home to roost, as the saying goes? Can they do this for 10 more years, 50 more years, 100 more years? Who knows?
Well, I do think that there's a falsity to the economy in the sense that we measure things by GDP. I think GDP is a useless aggregate. Let's not forget that it includes government spending. So all you have to do is sign a $2.9 trillion CARES Act, like Congress did last April, and you've got a bunch of new GDP. So I don't weigh much by that. So how long this can go on? I mean, a lot of people in my circles were decrying this stuff in 1971. Mm-hmm. So, we have to admit when we've been wrong about that. It can go on a hell of a lot longer than we think. And here's the thing is that currencies are relative. So as long as the rest of the world is as or more profligate, then the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds, U.S. Treasuries continue to look good by comparison, right? You can still get a percentage point or 1.10 or whatever you can get on a 10-year. So versus negative interest on most Euro bonds. So that's the difference, is that Uncle Sam has a lot of built-in advantages. And I understand if politicians want to exploit that, I just wish they'd be a little more honest about it.
Right. I couldn't agree more. It is a game of relativism. It's a compared to what game. And the U.S. is in a better position than the other countries, most of them at least, for sure. But at some point, the math can't continue to work. I mean, unless you're just going to create massive inflation, which of course, like you alluded to earlier, is a wealth transfer, and it creates more concentration of wealth because of the Cantillon effect. And that's certainly what's happened this time around. I mean, it's public. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that the billionaires are just getting insanely rich, and there's a whole segment of the population that just doesn't have much of a voice that is being impoverished by this. And I don't know if I'd agree with you on the grocery comment, though. It seems like groceries are getting quite expensive. And I'm sure they're getting more expensive, but I guess not to the degree of other assets. So fair enough.
Well, the best purchase we made last year, and it took several months, was a big freezer for our garage, because now we buy meat on sale. And
you're buying futures.
Yeah. But it's a strange time in America, and we can't. Here's what we do know is that America's pretty resilient, and relative to other countries, America's pretty productive. So what we need to do is just simply get back to basics and get back to normal and get past this COVID nonsense, and hopefully get government off our backs a little bit without any huge income tax increases by the Biden administration. But short of that, I think we're in kind of a dark period, and the only way out of it is deflationary pressures, and that's both on the through the economic side of things, but also through technology. That's the natural order of things. That's why a DVD player cost $500 in 1990, and now they're $40 at Walmart. So not that anyone wants a DVD player, but the point is that slowly lowering prices are actually a symptom and a signal and a sign of a healthy world. So this 2% inflation business is just absolutely crazy. It's morally corrupt. It's exceedingly damaging to the poor. And, what we need to do is wake up more Americans to this express policy of their own government to harm them.
I agree. And so they'd argue that, they're trying to play the Phillips curve. And so they're trying to match that up. And they would also argue that, look, the population, now it's not always growing, but overall the population grows. So you can have inflation relative to population or relative to GDP growth, which I know it's manipulated. I know the stats are BS. I get it. And feel free to offer some insights on the GDP stats. We haven't gone into that too much. We've done unemployment and, of course, inflation is so manipulated. That's what they would argue, right? That 2% target is okay. And, of course, Powell abandoned that several months ago. But does their argument hold any water?
Well, it does if you believe, as I think most economists who are under about 40 years of age, or maybe even 50 years of age, if you believe that an economy is based on consumption, then yes, it makes perfect sense. Because, this was Keynes's revolution, and you have to give him credit. It's been an enduring one since the 30s, which is basically that the way you get an economy productive and healthy is to stimulate buying. And the way you stimulate buying is by making money and credit more widely available. And that's the answer to everything. Now, I would say modern Keynesians have actually gone farther than he would. He understood that there was a limit on all this. We have MMTers today, modern monetary theorists.
I was going to ask you about MMT.
In the same camp. But, I think when your worldview is that consumption, somehow magically produces production rather than the other way around, it absolutely makes sense. I just think that's an upside down worldview.
So what is the right side up worldview? Just to make sure our listeners catch that, I want to hear.
Well, it's very simple, that production precedes consumption, and that your ability to consume, we all want stuff. We all want more stuff, right? We all want a higher standard of living. I guess in a certain sense, we all want fancier stuff or fancier houses or fancier cars. You don't have to stimulate that. That's just a natural human drive and desire. What you have to produce, though, is an economy that's productive enough that gives people the actual means to satisfy this desire for better stuff. And you do that by being productive. And it's your own productivity which gives you an income or ownership or a salary that makes you able to go out and be a consumer in the first place. Or hopefully it's your own productivity, not a welfare check. This is the whole point of Say's law. Jean-Baptiste Say. We're bringing up a lot of French economists today for some reason. Yeah. But, this is the insight of his law, which is that, we've got this backwards. So we have to look at what makes an economy more productive. When we look at GDP, when we look at unemployment, when we look at all these sort of false metrics, we lose sight of, what really drives the economy. And what really drives it is when an iPhone goes from, a big clunky thing at $1,000 to a small streamlined thing at $300. That's what drives the economy is better and higher productivity. And so it seems to me that so much of what government and central banks do is designed to thwart this.
Yeah. You're right. And what's scary about the example of technology, and, Jeff, I look at it as basically this war on whether or not we will have inflation, deflation, disinflation, stagflation, whatever, right? Mostly inflation, deflation are the debate. On one side, we have fiscal policy and central bank monetary policy. And on the other side, we have technology being deflationary in a positive way, then government and central bank being inflationary because they're so irresponsible. But who will win that battle? I guess nobody really knows yet. It does seem like technology continues to amaze us, and there are so many incredible things on the frontier. And you might say, well, there's no limit to technology, but gosh, there's no limit to money printing either.
Isn't that something? Maybe that's the story of the 20th century in the West, is that technology managed to outpace the state. No matter what it did, no matter what depredations it attempted, technology was always moving faster. And if you look at where prices are falling, where things are becoming more affordable for average people, where once luxury items like air conditioning and televisions and a second car are now widely available, they're all in the most private of private sector markets, where if you look at where prices are rising, where things are become unaffordable, they're in education, they're in insurance, they are in healthcare, they're in all the areas where government's most involved.
That's a fantastic point. On the technology side of that debate, sadly, they will hedonically index all that technology. And essentially, they're telling us citizens, we're not entitled to progress, right? The CPI is entitled to the progress. In other words, making it look lower than it really is. But yeah, the healthcare and the tuition expenses are insane. It is just beyond the beyond. It really is. How much longer can we have these low rates? It's toxic for older people. I mean, they depend on higher interest rates so they can get a return without, going way up the risk curve. They have to become speculators to earn any return on their money anymore, which is just dangerous. It's irresponsible.
That's so right. That was always the conventional wisdom. As you got older, you got out of equities. Right now, we have little old ladies forced into buying
Bitcoin
altcoins or a Tesla or whatever. And you shouldn't have to chase yields when you're older. You should be able to live off your savings. I mean, first and foremost, this is the natural state of things, is positive rates of interest. But I think that they're going to keep them low basically forever, or at least until there's some sort of nasty economic shock, for the simple reason that if the Fed funds rate, for example, the average interest being paid on Treasuries right now, and that's short-term, long-term, all the Treasuries out there is just 1.5%. If that rose to just historical averages, let's say it tripled to 4.5 or 5%, then the single biggest item in the federal budget would be debt service. That would be over $1 trillion. So every year when Congress got out their pencils and started writing up a budget, number one would be more than $1 trillion for interest on the national debt. That would be more than defense, Social Security, Medicare, all these other huge programs. So I think for that reason alone, there's this symbiotic relationship between the Fed and Congress, which is, going to attempt, they can't always do it.
Yeah,
I think we're going to see some naturally upward pressure on bond rates, but I think that they will attempt to keep interest rates very, very low for as long as we might be alive.
Wow, that's amazing. For that long, huh? Incredible. And the question becomes, what do we do when we hit the next crisis and they have no ability to lower rates anymore? How do we get through it next time, right?
Well, I think the next step is and some central banks already do this, Japan, Switzerland, but the next step is for the Fed to buy equities. Yeah. Janet Yellen's alluded to this. It's sort of like dropping an outrageous trial balloon so that the fallback position seems a little more reasonable. Well, we just, we're not really going to do that. Right. But I think they are really going to do that next time around. And that's the natural progression of things, is just to prop up equity markets so that we don't have a crash, at least a nominal crash there. What they can't control, everything we've been talking about on your show today is about nominal numbers, right? You can have a nominal inflation, you can have nominal stock prices, nominal housing prices, nominal food prices, but what I think they can't control is real rates of interest and real return on investment, because at some point, I think the reality of the marketplace just overrides their machinations.
Yeah, it really does. And that would be so scary if the Fed really became like the biggest stock market investor. And talk about socialism for the rich. They'll just pick all the winners and losers. Oh, we like your company, we don't like your company. I mean, can you imagine? Wow. That's a scary world.
There are a million ways that the Fed could prop up the housing market by buying REITs, by buying, bonds, which own a lot of rental real estate. And of course, we now know the private equity funds and a lot of other players are snapping up rental real estate. I'm quite concerned about this fall because we literally have winter coming. Mm-hmm. Not in Palm Beach necessarily, but even in Palm Beach.
Economic winter, we could have that here though.
And so, when you get rid of this rent moratorium, there's going to be an enormous backlog of evictions. Mm-hmm. And wow, that is really something to consider. And, I certainly know some small landlords. I'm not one myself, but, they've told me even before the COVID crisis, there's nothing a local police officer or local sheriff hates worse than to go to someone's home. It could be a single mom with small children, and to physically forcibly evict them after they've exhausted, they're weeks behind even the court order. That's a hell of a thing. And we've accustomed a bunch of people, to get used to not paying rent for a long time now. And I don't know what this looks like when this starts to unwind.
Well, I agree with you that that's a sad picture you paint about the specific individuals, but overall, I mean, the market has to clear, right? Yes. We have to have people reallocate to homes they can actually afford, right? That they cannot live in houses they can't afford. And the same thing happened during the Great Recession with the foreclosure crisis. They kept putting it off. And, in my opinion, what they should have done is just let the market take care of it. Yes, it would have been like ripping off a Band-Aid. It would have been painful, but it would have healed really quickly. And the same is true with the eviction moratorium issue, as tough as it is. And, frankly, a lot of people just been working the system. They can afford those houses. They just haven't been paying because they're just taking advantage of it. It's a mixed thing. And obviously, the government getting involved in all this stuff creates all these distortions. And, your group does a fantastic job of writing about this and teaching people about these things and how important they are. As you close up, give us your website and, just tell our listeners and viewers about any resources you have to offer that can teach people out there in the world, in the marketplace, how this stuff really works and how important it is to understand it.
Well, anybody who's interested in economics, I encourage them to go to Mises.org. There's, a lifetime's worth of reading there, articles, videos, speeches, books, free books, ebooks, PDFs, but there's also via our Twitter and Facebook streams, there's, for people who just maybe want to consume a little more of a light touch, more of a media source to keep abreast of economics, but maybe they don't want to consume it every day or something like that. I mean, that's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be an alternative school where people can absorb as much or as little economics as they care to. And right now, we need alternative institutions, I think, more than ever, because I'm not sure the American people are really buying it. If you ever get a chance, look at the Fed's Twitter feed and look at the responses. It's starting to feel like the emperor has no clothes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any specific, what are you talking about? College tuition there or just in general on the Fed's Twitter feed?
Yeah, the Fed tweets about a lot. And they obviously the other day they were tweeting about Powell's tepid announcement that, we're going to start tapering and buying fewer bonds. And nobody believes that because they've said that before and they switched course even before COVID. They stopped tapering with the repo surprise of fall of 2019. So it's just interesting to me that officialdom gets so much pushback and there's so much distrust of these sort of technocratic people. And to be fair, that you can be really brilliant and really well-meaning and you can still be dead wrong.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the sense that we're getting with these, these Wharton graduates who populate the central banks of the world.
Yeah. Good points. So is it Mises.org?
Mises.org. You can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Deist, all one word.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate having you, and let's all keep the faith, but spread the word, because people, once they understand this and they get it, they'll act and vote accordingly. So it's just good to have groups like Mises out there doing this work.
Thank you, Jason.
As an income property investor, imagine being able to tap into a nationwide network, actually a worldwide network, of investors who share your same challenges and successes. Imagine being able to leverage the experience of experts and learn from their achievements and their mistakes. The Empowered Investor Inner Circle is an exclusive community of like-minded and successful investors who help each other invest smarter and avoid common setbacks and pitfalls. Join us today and take your portfolio to the next level. Level up and learn from the mistakes of others. Level up and effectively self-manage your portfolio. Level up and increase your peace of mind and your profits. Level up and gain greater control.
When you join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle, you are joining a network of accomplished, experienced, and knowledgeable investors. Investors who will help you take control of your investments while saving you time and money. Managing a portfolio of income properties in a diverse range of markets across America has never been easier. With technology, almost every aspect of income property investing can be done from the comfort of your own home. Join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle for monthly live training sessions with Jason Hartman and special guests to discuss which investment strategies will work the best with your unique life situation and portfolio. Get regular real estate updates and articles so you're in the know and up to date with what's happening in the world of income properties. You will also receive inside access to Jason and his team of investment counselors who will quickly answer any of your questions. Access our Rolodex of vetted resources, including property managers, contractors, plumbers, and electricians, so you know you're getting someone who does high-quality work. Act now and we'll include 1 free year of access to Property Tracker, a web-based program that will help you manage your income, expenses, legal documents, contracts, and all contacts associated with administering income properties nationwide. A 1-year subscription to Property Tracker costs $347 per year, but if you sign up for the Empowered Investor Inner Circle today, you will receive 1 year of Property Tracker access for free. Don't let this unique opportunity pass you by. Join the Empowered Investor Inner Circle today.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.